Fall is here. Okay, hi, my name is Ebony, but I like to go by EKG. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome back. Welcome if you're new. I hope you are enjoying yourself and the last few days of the summer. These are the books that I have on my TBR. End of year TBR. I have a lot of books to get to, and I'm going to get to them, or else you can personally hunt me down and force me to read the ones that I didn't get to by the end of the year. But today I'm going to be going over what's on my end of the year TBR. I formulate my end of the year TBR just based off of what's already on my bookshelf. I try not to buy books in excess. Like, I want to get to the stuff that I actually have on my shelf that I have not read yet, and I usually break it down into 3 categories: fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. But essentially, I am very much a mood reader, so I cultivated this end of the year TBR to reflect the current mood that I'm in right now in September, but that could change at any moment. So just overall, these are the things that I'm trying to get into, and I'll first start off with fiction books that I have on my radar. And the first book that I'm currently reading right now is Beautiful World, Where Are You? By Sally Rooney. This is Sally Rooney's 3rd book, and it follows Alice and Eileen's friendship relationship through email correspondence as they are dealing with their love lives, and 2 other characters, Felix and Simon, as well as how they are trying to find or make sense of the current state of the world. I'm really enjoying this book so far. I will be having a reading vlog coming out on that soon, so just be on the lookout for that. The next book that I have on the fiction section is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I know I mentioned this in my summer TBR, but truthfully, I've been saving it to read in the fall. It just gives me fall dark academia vibes, and essentially this book follows a murder mystery that takes place at Cambridge, and they are trying to figure out who the killer is. Of course, that's the point of a murder mystery. Just to give you some more background, it says Edward Fosha is murderer of this Mariana is certain, but Fosha is untouchable. Handsome and charismatic Greek tragedy professor at Cambridge University, Fosca is adored by staff and students alike, particularly by the members of a secret society of female students known as the Maidens. Oh, it's giving terror, it's giving dark academia, murder mystery, Greek mythology, which isn't typically my thing, to be honest, so we'll see about that. But I'm just very excited. This is also the author of The Silent Patient, so it's very fitting for fall. Cannot actually wait to read this. I'll probably get to this closer to Halloween. Up next, a book that's like just all over the place, all over BookTube, and that's Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. So I know this has to do with discussions on race. I believe the babysitter is an African-American and Black woman, and she is working for a white family. So, you know, this is really right up my alley, and it won the 2020 Booker Prize, which is really exciting. And you all know, if you watch my channel, that I enjoy a good story that centers around, you know, these issues of race and class and things like that. So also, the cover is stunning. And lastly, in the fiction section, I have been meaning to get to Law by Brian Washington. I definitely want to read this by the end of the year. And this is just a collection of short stories by Brian Washington, who is also the author of Memorial. And it is set in the city of Houston. It's a diverse microcosm of America. The son of a Black mother and a Latino father is coming of age. He's working at his family's restaurant, weathering his brother's blows and advice, resenting his older sister's absence, and discovering he likes boys. So it really feels to me like it will be an immersive experience on place and culture and how that impacts the individual. And I saw a blurb on the back by Ocean Vuong, someone I worship. So of course I was inclined to pick this up. Up next, we'll go into the poetry section. I'll just briefly list the poetry collections that I want to read. I have been reading kind of like letters or critical analyses centered on writing and poetry. For instance, I recently read and finished The Hatred of Poetry by Ben Lerner, which I thought was pretty interesting read. It analyzed the hatred of poetry, where it stems from, and why poets, writers, and readers of poetry hate the form. I thought that was cool. So kind of following on that same vein of why we write poetry, I want to read Letters to a Young Poet by Renee Rilke. And this was probably also mentioned in my summer TBR. I haven't gotten around to it yet because I have been on a Mary Oliver binge. And I actually have not been reading that much poetry recently, or poetry-centered pieces, so I want to get back into that for the fall. I also would love to read The Caring by Ada Limon, who is the author of Bright Dead Things that I spoke about before. So it says, for The Carrying, this is Ada Limon's most powerful collection yet. Vulnerable, tender, acute. These are serious poems, brave poems, exploring with honesty the ambiguous moment between the rapture of youth and the grace of acceptance. So yes, I too am in that ambiguous moment. So I think The Carrying is just going to speak to me. And then following along, apparently Ada Limon and the next poet I'm going to talk about are BFFs. One of you suggested that I read their correspondence of poetry in the New Yorker, and it was phenomenal. It's also narrated by them, so I'm going to leave that link down below. And the poet I'm talking about is Natalie Diaz, and she has a poetry collection when my brother was an Aztec. Natalie Diaz once said in an interview, I write hungry sentences because they want more and more lyricism and imagery to satisfy them. So this is actually her debut poetry collection that is a fast-paced tour of Mojave life and family narrative. So I read Post-Colonial Love Poem, which also centered on these topics, but I just think it would be great to read her debut poetry collection. And lastly, I want to check out The Undressing by Young Lee, which someone commented too that I should read this because Ocean Vuong's inspired by this poet, and I looked up the synopsis and I was like, yes, please, I need to get into this. I need to read this as soon as possible. And this is a tonic for spiritual anemia. It attempts to uncover things hidden since the dawn of the world. Short of achieving that end, these mysterious, unassuming poems investigate the human violence and dispossession increasingly prevalent around the world, as well as the horrors the poet grew up with as a child of refugees. So by no means is this poetry collection going to be a light poetry collection, but I would like to read someone who has also inspired Ocean Vuong and who is a phenomenal poet themselves. Alright, so next into nonfiction. I've never really been much of a nonfiction girl in terms of like memoirs, essay collection. I've very much been poetry girl and a fiction girl. Specifically contemporary fiction, literary fiction girl, never really much for an essay collection or memoir type of girl, but this year has changed that for me and I'm excited. I feel like I am uncovering new things. So kind of on the vein of poetry, my queen, Mary Oliver. I still have not read Upstream. I hate myself for it, but I'm going to by the end of the year. And this is just a collection of essays in which Mary Oliver reflects on her willingness to lose herself within the beauty and mysteries of the natural world and the world of literature. Same. I feel like Mary Oliver would be my spirit animal, or like my spirit guide, in terms of just writing poetry and having a very reflective, quiet, but poignant and powerful outlook on nature and the human condition. I absolutely stan her, and I'm gonna get to this. And honestly, I'm trying to read a few more of her poetry collections by the end of the year, but that's possible. Don't want to overload myself with a hefty TBR because I will be sad and disappointed if I don't even get to like half of these things that I'm talking about. Okay, up next, I want to get to The Argonauts by Maggie Nelson. Maggie Nelson is the author of Bluets, which I have talked about quite a bit on my channel, but this is a collection of short stories, prose, genre-bending memoir, a work of auto theory offering fresh, fierce, and timely thinking about desire, identity, and the limitations and possibilities of love and language. Yes, sign me up. I think Maggie Nelson is a phenomenal writer, and her outlook always seems to me, I've only read Bluets, but in Bluets, very philosophical and she truly knows how to build a sense of link and connection from her own life and relating that to the natural world and the human condition. This is what I live for. Okay, another very short essay collection is The Body, an essay by Jenny Boley. This was actually recommended to me, I think on the Goodreads. You know, it's like, since you've read this, read this. And it's comprised of footnotes to a non-existent text. The Body, an essay is a meditation on absence, loss, and disappearance that offers a guarded narrative of what may or may not be a love letter, a dream, a spiritual autobiography, a memoir, a scholarly digressions on the relation of life to a book. It seems to be exploring the body as a void. Like, just, you know, just hear me out. This is me. This is the type of literature that I like. So, The Body, an essay by Jenny Boley. Very short, baby. And then also it's just written like this, so I'm sure I'm gonna fly through this. So recently I read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and oh my god, phenomenal. I listened to the audiobook, and when I say I now want to immerse myself into the culture of 60s, 70s California, LA, like I want it all. So of course the main two girls that I have to hit up for that experience, no other than Joan Didion, The White Album, which is just a collection of essays that was first published in 1979. The upheavals and aftermaths of the 1960s through the lens of Joan Didion's spiritual confusion, key events, figures, and trends of the era. So including Charles Manson, the Black Panthers, and the advent of the shopping mall. So I think this is just such a cool time to read about and learn about, and I want to get into this collection by Joan Didion, and then kind of mentioning the other author who in the same vein but just different style of writing, Slow Days Fast Company by Eve Babbitt. I'm very excited to read this. I've heard nothing but great things about Eve Babbitt in terms of her writing, and it says, no one burned hotter than Eve Babbitt, possessing skin that radiated its own kind of moral laws, spectacular teeth, and a figure that was the stuff of legends. She seduced seemingly everyone who was anyone in LA for a long stretch of the 60s and 70s. And honestly, I want to read this very soon because I'm still very much into the culture of Southern California, LA. And lastly, I'm just going to mention Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino. I've talked about this book for a while, but I haven't really been drawn to read it. Like I said, I'm a mood reader, but it's still on my radar for reading the end of this year. Every time I read the synopsis, I feel emotional. So what's taking me so long? I don't know. Actually, I do know. I've been kind of in a reading slump, which I think I mentioned before, but yeah, I don't know. I've been picking up books and they're great books, but I just don't feel like reading them. So I need something that's easy breezy, will get me into the habit of reading again or being excited to read again. But yeah, so I still want to get to this. And lastly, I'm just going to do two books that are kind of on my possibilities books, and that is Blueberries by Elena Savage. I have been meaning to get to this as well. This is a collection of short stories, poetry. I've heard that this is also genre bending, and there's nothing I love more than genre bending literature because I think it's fun and interesting to read different forms of storytelling. It says essays concerning understanding. It says, I mean, who cares about opinions, gossip, whatever, when bodies are so vulnerable in search only of love and breath. The body frequently escapes her but is always very much present in these compellingly vivid, clear-eyed essays on an embodied self in flight through the world. We see a theme. What does it mean to be a body existing? I want to know, okay? I want to know, and I want to see and hear what other people are trying to know and understand. So that's why I want to read Blueberries. And lastly, I would love to read Cultish by Amanda Montell. I mean, guys, just look at the cover. You know, I'm a UFO girl. I am an alien. I wish I lived on another planet sometimes, but then existential anxiety and dread hits me, and I realize how small I am. But anyway, so Cultish, getting back to Cultish, It is a collection of essays that explores the language of fanaticism, what compels people to join cults or be a part of groups or movements that use cultish language, and the psychology behind that. I'm very much into it. I would dissection of why people form groups. It's just something I'm into, and what links people psychologically. And I just think it's cool because Amanda, and cultish from what I've heard, she talks about very common things like sports teams all the way up to Soul Cycle. So I like that. It seems to me like it's going to present a more nuanced understanding of what a cult is and how it starts and the psychology behind it. So I can't wait to read that. That concludes my end of the year TBR. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Let me know what books you're planning on reading for the end of this year, and we can have a little chat. Let's recommend each other some books in the comments. And you can follow me on my social medias. It'll be linked down below. I thank you so much for watching. Love you guys, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye!
And I was like, yo.